Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we're making these super sweet little pumpkins. There is a written pattern including the 3 different sizes, but in today's tutorial we're going to be doing the small one. And it is super cute. You can use any color yarn at all. It does not have to be typical pumpkin colors, although how cute is that in typical pumpkin? Adorable. So you can make them for a nursery or any sort of room that wants a little pick-me-up for the season, or just something fun for fall, a classroom. They're just so absolutely adorable. So let's jump into the pumpkin patch. These adorable pumpkins can be made in any yarn at all. This is Savor, and this is Zerda Alpaca, both from Ice Yarns. I'll put a link down below, but you can use any yarn at all, whatever you have in your yarnscape that you want to use up, or that would match your decor for the season. And they can be made any size just by making a longer chain to start. So the hot pink one at the very bottom, the Bougainvillea, this is 40 chains to start, and then these 2 are 30, and my little orange pumpkin is 20. For my pumpkin, I'm going to be using this awesome yarn from Ice Yarns. It is Savor. It is my go-to acrylic, super soft, super easy to work with, and it is a worsted weight yarn, so any worsted weight yarn will work fine. You could use a smaller yarn, but you'd have to use a smaller hook. Also some scraps for the stem and the leaf. This is a little bit of Softly Baby I have left over, and this is a little bit of a Lara. So you can use anything you want, just little remnants or scrap busters for your stem and your leaf. You'll need a crochet hook, whatever goes with your yarn, but use a hook on the smaller side. I'll be using a 5mm crochet hook for the pumpkin, just because you want your stitches to be a little bit nice and small to hold the stuffing inside. And you'll also be needing a darning needle to turn it into a pumpkin later on. You'll also need some hollow fiber or pillow stuffing. So let's get started. Start by making a slip knot, leaving about a 10-inch tail. You want a long enough tail to be able to sew your pumpkin together at one end when we're finished. And shrink that down and put it onto your hook. So depending what size pumpkin you want to make, small is 20 chains, medium is about 30, large is 40, but you of course can make a pumpkin any size. So to make the small pumpkin, you are going to chain 20, medium is 30, and large is 40. So I'm going to start by chaining 20. And I'm doing a loose chain. I'm not correcting my stitches, I'm not pulling my yarn. I'm just slipping it through my hook over and over however it wants to go. So a nice loose chain. If you chain tightly, maybe try a larger hook. Use 1 size up or 1mm larger. So pause the video and I'll meet you back when your chain is finished. So there's my 20 chains and chain 1. So whatever chain number you have done, just chain 1. That's going to be our turning chain. And to count your chains, you do not count what's on your hook and you do not count the knot where you started. You just count these little V's going down underneath your chain. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're just going to be putting our hook right on top of that bottom loop. And that'll give us 2 strands of yarn on our hook and a really nice stitch. So wrap your yarn and into the second chain just here at the bottom. I'm going to push my hook in right on top of that 1 strand. So I'll have 2 loops of that stitch on my hook. Wrap your yarn and make 1 double crochet in the second chain. If you're new to crochet, you can also use some stitch markers just to keep track of that very first double crochet you did. So underneath your hook, that V, just pop a stitch marker right underneath that stitch, and that'll help you tell where your first double crochet was. And now keep going along, making 1 double crochet into each stitch. Remembering to just look at the bottom strand of the stitch. We've done 1 into this loop down here. So the next loop is right here. So we're going to make 1 double crochet into each of these chains going all the way along. Remember to be looking at the bottom. We have worked into this stitch here, but it also does look like we could make a double crochet here, but that is not true. Remember to be looking at the bottom. So we've gone into this loop here, so grab the next loop, and that's right here. So keep going, making 1 double crochet into each chain, going all the way along, keeping an eye on the bottom loop, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. So there are my 20 double crochets into that chain. So chain 1 and turn your work. So now we're going to be making double crochets, 1 into each stitch all the way back, and we're going to start with the very first stitch right here on the edge. So wrap your yarn and into that very first stitch, 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet into each stitch, going all the way along this row. Remember, if you're new to crochet, you can pop a stitch marker right into that very first double crochet that we made, just so when you're coming back, you know what you're looking for. If you can recognize your stitches, then you don't have to put in the stitch markers. And now keep going, 1 double crochet into each of these stitches, going all the way along. And we want to be getting 2 strands of each stitch on our hook, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. At the end of the row, we have 1 more double crochet to make. So you can go ahead, take that stitch marker out. And if you are not using the stitch marker, it will always be this stitch right on the hill. So if you tip up your work, you'll see that stitch right on the side, and we're going to be making our last double crochet right into that stitch. So there's our last double crochet, chain 1, and turn your work. Now into the very first stitch, 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet into each stitch, going all the way along. So the very first stitch, and each stitch along. So keep going, 1 double crochet into each stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. At the end of the row, we have to go into that very last stitch right here, that little one on the hill. So we're going to wrap your yarn and tip up your work. You'll be able to see that stitch a little better, and finish your row. So 1 double crochet into the last stitch, which is on the hill, and that completes 3 rows of our work. So chain 1, turn, and we're going to do the exact same thing for our 4th row. So 1 double crochet into the first stitch, and every stitch all the way along this row, up to and including this last stitch on the end. So pause the video and I'll meet you when you get back to the end of your row. End of the row. Just remember to always go into that very last stitch, that little guy on the hill. Always pick up the guy on the hill, and that'll give you a really nice straight edge for your crochet. So that's why we're doing it that way. It gives us a really nice straight edge. So that is 4 rows completed. For the next row, we're going to be doing front post double crochet. So to start row 5, we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. This row is a little bit different, so we're going to skip our first stitch, and we're going to go right in after it and under that next double crochet. So we're going to be doing front post as going in and out, picking up 1 stitch at a time and wrapping our double crochets right around the posts. So we're going to start by going in right after our first double crochet and picking up our second. So we're skipping the first stitch. So wrap your yarn in right after the first double crochet and out, picking up that second post, and make 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn. Now we're going to go in right before the next double crochet and out right after. So we're picking it up and putting it right onto our hook. So wrap your yarn and into the space before the stitch and out after the stitch, and make your double crochet. And again, before the next stitch and out after, 1 double crochet. So these are front post double crochets. We're just putting them in a different area. And then your work will look like this. And you'll have a nice little ridge starting on the back side. So wrap your yarn in before the next stitch and out right after, and make your double crochet. So now we're going to keep going along, making 1 front post double crochet around each stitch of the row below. So wrap your yarn in before the next stitch, out right after, getting that whole stitch onto your hook, and make your double crochet around that whole post. So keep going, making one front post a double crochet around each stitch in the row down below, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. At the end of this row, we have that stitch on the hill. So let me take my hook out so I can show you. Just kind of pick it apart. You can pull that chain 1 away from your post. See how we can do that? So we're going to go in before our stitch and out before that chain 1. That's where we're going to be doing our last front post double crochet. So wrap your yarn in before that stitch, wiggle with your thumb to get that chain 1 out of the way, and make your front post double crochet. So that is the end of this row. Now we're going to go back to doing our regular double crochets. So they all start with a chain 1, turning your work and going into that very first stitch. And we're going to do this for 3 more rows. So 3 rows of regular double crochet and 1 row of front post double crochet. So pause the video and I'll meet you back when you have done 3 more rows of our regular double crochets. So the first row of regular double crochets after those front posts, the end of the row looks a little bit different. We have our last regular double crochet, but we also have our chain, and we always have to work into that chain because our chain was our very first stitch of that row. So go into your last real double crochet, and then we have to go into our chain. So we're just going to want to go right there, just into the thick of it. It doesn't totally matter. You just want to get into the 3rd chain up or the next stitch after that double crochet. So I'm just going to wiggle my hook hopefully right in that area and make my last double crochet. So I just push my hook literally and get 2 strands of that stitch on my hook and make my double crochet. So that is the last double crochet of the row. So remember to make your double crochet into the chain 3, the first row after our front posts. And you can go ahead and count, make sure you have the same number of stitches that you started with, and remember that where you start with that chain 1, you will have a fat stitch on one end. So this is 1 stitch, and just make sure that you have the same number, because this is where you might have dropped a stitch just because it's kind of a different join than we've been doing. So keep an eye on that and keep going. You want to do 2 more rows. So chain 1, turn your work, and 1 double crochet into each stitch, including the last guy that is on the hill. So keep going, doing 2 more rows, and I'll meet you back. So at the end of your 3rd row of regular double crochets, we're going to get ready for our front post double crochets for row 4. If you're making the larger size pumpkin, you can keep going and do 2 more rows of regular double crochets before you do your front post. That'll space out your ridges for a larger size pumpkin. For the small size, 3 rows is great. So start your front post double crochet row with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and turn your work. And you'll know you're ready to do your front post because the ridge is on the back side. You can't see that little ridge, it's facing down. So that means when we do our front post, the next ridge will also be facing down. And that's what we want so that our pumpkin looks really nice all the way around. So we're going to go in right after the first stitch and out right after the second stitch, getting that whole stitch on our hook, just like we did for the other round of front post double crochets. So into that first space and out right after that stitch, and make your front post double crochet. So now we're going to keep doing this, 1 front post double crochet all the way down along this row, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of the row. At the end of the row, we have our fat stitch with our chain 1. So just remember to separate that chain 1. I just use my thumb to pull it away a little bit. We're going to go in and out, just around the double crochet and ignoring that little chain bit. Just like that. So that's how we'll do our last front post double crochet of each of these rows. So it'll look like this on one side and that on the other. Just make sure you always have your stitches, your fancy stitches pointing out on the one side. You want all of these rows on the outside of your pumpkin. So now keep going, making 3 rows of regular double crochets and 1 row of front post double crochets until you have a nice big rectangle. So my pumpkin is now this size, or the length of it, and how to tell if you're finished: if you fold it in half, you want it to be wider than it is tall. You could keep going and have it like this shape, or you could have stopped a little bit before and almost done it just square like that. So this is up to you. You could make them, each pumpkin, a different size completely, so they're all unique. For me, I've done 7 rows of the front post double crochets, or 7 of the repeats, and I've done 3 rows after my last row of front post double crochet. So now we're ready to join up our work. So fold it in half, your front post double crochets facing out, and we're going to join with a row of single crochet. So chain 1. And now we're going to line up our stitches. So we're going to go under the first stitch and grab the loop of our starting chain. And we're going to make 1 single crochet in each stitch with the loop together, all the way down along like that. So into the first stitch, getting both strands of that stitch on your hook, and grab that first loop and make 1 single crochet. The next stitch and the next loop, 1 single crochet. Under the stitch and grab the loop, 1 single crochet. So keep going like this all the way down to join up your pumpkin. At the end, we have our stitches on the hill and our loop on the hill. So just remember to grab those and make your last single crochet. So we've finished, and that is what it looks like. Chain 1. So now cut your yarn, leaving about a 10-inch tail. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down. So this is how far we have gotten now, and we have a tail on each side. Go ahead and thread your yarn needle. And now we're just gonna weave this in and in and in around. We don't have to do it very often, maybe every second row. So just grab a loop every centimeter or half an inch. If you run out of yarn, you can just start cinching it in a little bit to get yourself some more yarn. And right back where we started. Now we can cinch it all together. So just pull on that yarn. You don't want to break it, but you do want all of that fabric, textile to cinch together. Just like that. If you put your hand in under, you can try to poke your finger out and make sure that you can't. There we go. And now you can stitch a little bit from one side to the other side. So just go across. From side to side, across. And that'll keep it nice and cinched together. I'm not going to knot my yarn, I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Now it's time to put some stuffing inside. I'm using this hollow fiber or fiber fill. When you've filled it enough that you think it's going to be good, then go ahead and thread your tail from where you started, your starting tail. Do the same thing as we did at the bottom. Just grab a loop every half inch or so, all the way around. And then pull it tight again. And you can make sure all that stuffing stays inside. And also check if you have enough stuffing. We can also add more now if you feel like you need to. And cinch it up again as close as you can. And then starting opposite of where your thread is, go on the opposite side and just grab anything. To cinch that up. So from one side to the other side, like a crisscross. There we go. You just don't want to see anything coming out. Now we're going to stitch these two together. So decide where you want your up and down to be, or the top of your pumpkin. Check both your sides and see which one you think is prettier. I think I'm going to use this side here as my top of my pumpkin. And from the pretty side, or the side you think is the prettiest, have that yarn on your needle. And you're going to go down straight in to the center. If you're making a really big pumpkin, a doll needle will help, or else really push your pumpkin together so you can get your needle right out of the center on the other side. See, I'm really pushing it so you can grab your needle. And just get that yarn out. And now we're going to tie these together. So the easiest way is to tie it twice. So I've tied it once, just a regular, and I'm going to go and just loop it through one more time. I call that a hockey skate tie. That's how you tie hockey skates, but you might, if you have a better name for it, let me know. That just helps it not slip back. So I'm going to pull that down and see how if you let go it stays tight? Squish it and pull again. There we go. That keeps it tight. So you can let go of your tails and it won't cinch back. And then just tie once on top of that to keep it safe. Cut both your yarn tails the same length and thread your needle with both of them. And now we're just going to get our tails inside our pumpkin. We're going to hide our tails. So back inside the bottom part, anywhere, doesn't matter. And then come out the side. You just want to kind of push so you can get your needle out of your pumpkin. Just drag those tails inside, like that. Push your pumpkin a little bit and cut that yarn. Massage it how you'd like your pumpkin to look. And now we're ready to move on to the stem and the leaf. Grab whatever yarn you're going to use for your stem. And for this, we do not need to leave a long tail. So just a short little tail and a slip knot. Chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to turn this into a ring. So we're just going to put our hook straight into the very first chain we made. Now take some time, get yourself situated. We want to be working around our tail, so we make a little U shape underneath our hook. That little U. And I'm going to hold it open with my finger and my thumb. And I'm also pinching that tail. Slip stitch to turn it into a ring, still holding it open, and chain 1. Now we're going to make 6 single crochets right where your finger is. So straight in and 6 single crochets. So 1, 2, and 6. So into each stitch, going all the way around, we're going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch. So push your hook in, 2 single crochets. And into the next stitch, 2 single crochets. And into each stitch until we get to where we stepped up. Looks just like that. Now for the next round, we're going to do decreases. So don't worry about it being absolutely perfect. If you want to keep track of where you stepped up, you can just put a little stitch marker just in one of those strands, just to show you the area of where we're starting our rows. Now into each of these stitches going around, we're going to do decreases now. So that's the top of our stem, the little flat part. Now we're going to work on decreasing. So into the next stitch, start your single crochet, leave it on your hook. Into the next stitch, start your single crochet. So there's 3 strands of yarn on your hook. Wrap your yarn and take off all 3 strands. So that is a decrease. I'm going to do that all the way around. So start your single crochet in the next stitch, leave it on your hook, start your single crochet in the next stitch, 3 strands on your hook, finish those together. And we're going to just keep doing that. Start your single crochet, start your second single crochet, and finish them together. Start your single crochet, start your second single crochet, and finish them together. So keep going with this all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get back to your stitch marker. You can see it's really dished up into like a little pancakey thing. So I'm going to flip it the right way, or pretty side facing out. There you go. Now you can kind of see the shape of it. And keep doing your decreases. I've done decreases. I have 4 stitches left. So now I'm going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch until my stem is the height that I'd like it to be. Now don't worry if yours is not exactly like mine. Ideally each pumpkin will have a slightly different stem. You could stop your decreases sooner so that it has a thicker stem. You could keep going more if it has a skinnier stem. It's all up to you. So into each stitch, 1 single crochet. And now keep going until your stem is the height you want it to be. When your stem is the height you want it to be, go ahead and just slip stitch into that next stitch just to kind of even it out. Slip stitch and chain 1. Now cut your yarn. You want to leave a long enough tail to sew your stem onto your pumpkin. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, and your stem is complete. So thread your needle with that tail. And again, make sure you're working on the side that is the prettiest for you. I think this one's the prettiest for me. And I'm just going to poke my needle straight down into that center and then come out somewhere. Like that. And now we're just going to stitch it. So bring your yarn back up and through and grab a stitch of your stem and back down into your pumpkin, coming out a little on the other side. And just keep repeating doing that until your stem feels secure. Mine's pretty secure now, so I'm just going to go back down, grab some of my stem, and make a knot. So put my needle back in that loop and snug that down just to kind of knot it, and then back into my stem and down into my pumpkin. I'm just going to come out somewhere on the side. Bring that yarn through, push your pumpkin down a little bit, and cut that tail. So there is our stem complete. Now it's time for a leaf. I'm going to use this Zerda alpaca. I have a little left over from my other pumpkin, just because I like the color combination. Use whatever yarn you have on hand that you have a little bit extra of. Using your same hook, we are going to do a chain. Leave a long enough tail to sew in a little bit. Make a slip knot. And chain 11. You can of course customize your leaf by adding more or less chains. Into the second chain from your hook, just this little guy right here, 1 single crochet. And again into the next chain, 1 single crochet. I'm just going underneath the 1 loop into the next chain, just grabbing one loop. I'll do half double crochets into the next 2 stitches. So wrap your yarn and into the next chain, just the top loop, 1 half double crochet. And again into the next chain, just the top loop, 1 half double crochet. Into the next chain, 1 double crochet. And into the next chain after that, we're going to do 2 double crochets into the same chain. That's going to give our leaf a little bit of a curl. There's 1 and 2. You can customize this for each pumpkin you're doing. You can put more increases to curl your leaf a little more or less. You could skip them completely. It's up to you. And into the next chain, 1 double crochet. So just that top loop, 1 double crochet. Into the next chain, half double crochet. Into the next chain, single crochet. And into the last chain, I'm going to slip stitch. So just slip stitch. You can change the order of these stitches. That's just the idea. So if each leaf is different, that is not a bad thing. So now chain 1 to secure your yarn and cut your tail, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle, whatever you're comfortable with. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and thread that tail onto your needle. Now we're going to go down somewhere. It doesn't matter, wherever you think the leaf should live. We're going to go and put our needle, I'll put mine on this side, straight down right at the bottom of the stem and the pumpkin. I'm just going to poke my needle straight down inside and then come up somewhere else on the other side of that stem. Pull it in nice and snug and make sure you like how it looks. I think that's really cute. And you can go back again. So find a different spot down there or grab a piece of that stem and come back out where the leaf is. There we go. So we have 2 tails for our leaf, and we can just go ahead and knot these together. Knot. Make sure you're happy with where it's living. Now we thread the tails onto your needle. Now back down into that stem and out somewhere on that side. Give it a squish and drag all that yarn through. Push your pumpkin and cut those tails. Oh, that's cute. It even did a little natural curl. Sweet. So each leaf you do will be a bit different. You can kind of play with them to get them how you like them to be on your pumpkin. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell beside that so you don't miss out on any new upcoming tutorials just like this one. And you can also find me on Facebook, The Secret Yarnery, or also on Instagram at Secret Yarnery. Love to see the yarn you chose for yours. And thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you in the next video and stay hooked.